Is HBAR set to rally? Let's go ahead and discuss. Hey everyone, welcome back to Upside Down Data. Today I want to talk about whether or not HBAR will be able to continue its rally following the XRP court ruling. If you're not aware, there was yesterday a very bullish ruling in the SEC case where basically transactions of XRP that occurred on exchanges were deemed to be not securities or not securities transactions. And this was a ruling that kind of rippled out into the broader crypto space, suggesting that there's a path for altcoins to not be labeled securities. The SEC has been trying to label basically every single altcoin as a security, and this basically was a sign that that's not just an easy argument for them to win. And in fact, this court ruling was opposed to what they were arguing. So HBAR was not an asset that had been named a security by the SEC. You know, when the SEC sued Coinbase, they named a whole bunch of altcoins as securities. HBAR was not among them. But that's not to mean that HBAR was going to be permanently safe from being labeled that. And so when we saw yesterday this big pump that HBAR put in, 7.5-ish% to the upside in a day, it's not as large as some of the assets that had before been named securities by the SEC. Solana, Matic as examples rallied more, but still good move to the upside. So I think the question that we can ask then is, might HBAR be able to continue this run? So one thing that we can look at first is, what is HBAR doing against Bitcoin? Because really the question that I think a lot of people have been asking, especially the thing that a lot of people have been saying about altcoins, HBAR amongst them, but really just generally with altcoins, was that we were in a situation where basically Bitcoin was just outperforming altcoins left, right, and center. So this is the HBAR Bitcoin valuation. So basically the number over here is the number of Bitcoin that one HBAR is worth. So when this is going down, it means that Bitcoin is outperforming HBAR. When it's going up, it means that HBAR is outperforming Bitcoin. And you can see that really ever since February of this year, HBAR, and this is not exclusive to HBAR in basically almost every altcoin that you look at, or the vast majority of altcoins that you look at, had similar charts. They were just bleeding out against Bitcoin. But you'll notice in the last few days that HBAR has been putting in a nice potential reversal. And this is something I talked about previously, was that we were getting to a point with a lot of altcoins where they were getting so bearish against Bitcoin that it seemed likely that some mean reversion to the upside was coming. And especially if there's some kind of catalyst, which showed up in the XRP ruling, that could really allow them to start doing that. We started to see HBAR do that here. And so it wouldn't surprise me if in broader altcoin space, we see this kind of play out where Bitcoin, which actually isn't doing especially well as I record this today, down about 2.4%, basically giving up most of the gains it had, following the XRP ruling. If what might be happening is that the money is kind of sloshing around, that people might be taking some money out of Bitcoin, and possibly they might be moving some of that into altcoins, which then could, allow you to see some reversals on the Bitcoin altcoin valuations. So if Bitcoin is going down and altcoins are going up, you're going to really see this move to the upside quite quickly if that happens. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but I think the context right now is certainly conducive to altcoins doing well, and I think HBAR would not be left out of that. That there's, it's certainly not settled law by any means that, tokens are not securities or tokens traded on exchanges are not securities. But this is a great first step. It's a really important first step, an important initial win in the court for the industry to basically push back against the SEC just labeling everything as a security. So also if we look at some of our models for HBAR, we can also get a sense of what we might expect in in this case, the shorter term. So this is the UDPI short term for HBAR. So it cares about moves that play out over days to weeks, so relatively short term in its time preference. And you see that, first of all, you'll see it's been in a pretty low range, historically speaking, for a while now for HBAR. The short-term UDPI has been kind of down in this lower level, and then kind of hitting a lower edge of this range in kind of local bottoms, and then in local tops hitting this kind of top bit. But I think with what we're seeing right now with XRP, with this ruling, is that we might be setting ourselves up to something more like we saw kind of in this phase here. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think it's going to be as big or bigger or anything like that, but a more protracted rally than we've seen in some of these other moves I think is quite feasible. And so we moved up into, up to the negative 2.7 range, out of negative 4.4. But it wouldn't surprise me if this time around, instead of acting as resistance, like in these prior times here, we might be able to see a move that's a little bit further to the upside. It wouldn't shock me if we can move up further with even potentially somewhere up towards zero, up towards some of these levels, being a possible target for the short-term UDPI, which would likely coincide with a decent move to the upside for HBAR. Now, that doesn't mean that's going to be all at once or it's just going to be a straight line. I think the market got pretty exuberant yesterday off the XRP's news, and now the market's just kind of digesting it and basically trying to kind of figure out, was that a fair pricing to shoot prices up that much or not? Some people taking profits, etc. We might need to consolidate for a bit. But I do think that right now, for altcoins, unless something new develops, like unless there's new news or something else that comes out, the context, the ground that we're standing on is a lot more bullish for altcoins, than it had been just a day ago, just 2 days ago. That currently we're in a place where we're seeing an uptrend starting to look like it's forming for HBAR. Would not surprise me if that were to continue. Now, this doesn't mean that that's just going to be something that takes us off to new all-time highs and that it's just all sunshine and rainbows from here. I think far from it. But what it could mean is some relief, that with this kind of oppressive bear market we were in, we got some relief, and then oppressive downtrend again, maybe we can get some more relief here as well, and that this kind of down-only price action that we had in 2022 might be more or less behind us. And that doesn't mean that it's just up only from here, and there still might be volatility, or HBAR still might need to chop around a bit, but we might be getting out of that kind of situation where you basically can only expect just downside for altcoins with HBAR, being a part of it. And of course, I think people who watch HBAR, there's a lot of people who are quite bullish on the fundamentals, the fact that it just passed 14 billion transactions on the mainnet. And then, if we kind of, as we go through time, start to transition into that next bull market, and if kind of fundamental uses, if real world uses become something that's actually valued, HBAR might be setting itself up to stand a bit better than a lot of other L1 chains that are out there that have really gotten very little real world use case, and some of them very little crypto use case at all themselves. That's one distinguishing feature with HBAR between those other ones. So I think this is something that's going to be important to watch. And so I think right now, again, unless some other news comes out that, some other thing happens where, securities become a problem or anything like that, the general kind of feel of the market, in my opinion, is bullish. And it wouldn't surprise me to see a continuation of this mean reversion against Bitcoin, at least to a certain degree from here. Now, obviously, none of this is financial advice. Just make your own opinions of what you think is going to happen. That's just my kind of current thinking right now. And the final thing I'll just mention as well is that it's important to keep in mind this is all happening while the broader markets have maintained a bullish stance. Here I'm looking at the NASDAQ, one of the major stock indices, and it is bursting out to the upside. It's breaking above this resistance at about 15,000, moving up. And that is good, because what it means is at the very least, stocks are not providing a headwind for crypto. If anything, there might be a tailwind. If risk assets are doing well, then maybe people are more willing to take more risk. And then in the situation where there's at least, a first glimpse that potentially altcoins aren't doomed to just be relegated to securities and just, kind of die on the vine, or at least become very difficult to deal with for larger institutions in the United States, that might not be as much of a risk as people thought before. And that could be another thing that could allow some capital to flow into altcoins like HBAR. So obviously I have to wait and see, but this is certainly looking a lot better for HBAR, in my opinion, than just a few days ago, that the kind of the ground has shifted. And then, the way that I navigate markets is that, I don't like to get too married to a thesis if fundamental things change. And so I had been in the camp before that I thought Bitcoin was going to continue to outperform alts generally, including HBAR being an alt, just because of the environment we're in with all this regulatory uncertainty and those things for kind of the foreseeable kind of near to medium term future. But now the ground has shifted. And, and that's what I've been kind of saying, is that if we saw that ground shift, don't be surprised to see some mean reversion of alts. Starting to see that with HBAR. And what this might mean is that we're really kind of shifting out, and that maybe we can actually, against the dollar, start to see the development of a new uptrend in the short term. Certainly that looks plausible from what the short-term UDPI is seeing. So if you want to get access to the UDPI and the rest of our models live, you can go over to our website, polaritydigital.io, link is in the description, and sign up for our Polarity Digital Pro subscription service. only $15 a month right now, which we think is an absolute steal. It won't stay there forever, which we think is an absolute steal. It won't stay there forever. We're going to be bumping that up. We'll give an announcement of when we're going to be bumping that up. But if you're interested, you can go and check that out there. And of course, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us on Twitter. A lot of updates, better indicators, and more over there.